Hi, ladies and gentlemen, this is Brother Teacher. Now, this is not out of character for me, the way in which I'm going to present this particular issue. Uh, just know that I'm always going to use consideration and great taste as much as I possibly can. And I'm going to try to give you clarity as to where I'm coming from. Now, let's get something out of the way, first of all. What most people call profanity, when they say you're speaking profanity or you're using curse words, they don't exist in everyday language that we use, because the words that we use that we call profanity is really not profanity. It's just what society has deemed as something that's inappropriate that they call profane. So the F-U-C-K word, we say that that's a curse word. The S-H-I-T word, we say that that's a curse word. Or when you say D-A-M-N, damn, and preceded by the word God, we say that that's profane or profanity. Or we say mother F, for example, we say that that's profanity. Only in our culture, only in our society have we attached those definitions and or labels to these words and expressions. But there's really no such thing as profanity as it relates to those expressions. So if you hear me in a video, or if you hear me allude to and or use a title that may contain those terms or expressions, I'm not using profanity. So let's just use common sense. Okay, if you don't understand that a bitch is a female dog, then shame on you. But I'm not going to ever call a woman a bitch. I never have and I never will, because the way in which it's used, we've adapted it as part of our regular vernacular, if you will. In America, people use it so commonly, those phrases. I stray away from saying anything like that in a derogatory sense. So I say these things, to sort of buffer the video before I begin. So here's the question I'm asking all of you. Why, oh why, in the hell are we allowing other people to tell us how to do things that we should already know how to do? I'll let you think about it. Let it marinate in your head. It is odd to me. It is strange. It is ridiculous that there are people today that are past the age of 20 years old, even younger, but I'm being nice, past the age of 20 years old, that still don't know how to cook. Women. Why is that? Why do you need someone to teach you the basics of cooking? Now, there might be some remote situations. There might be some certain circumstances that you came up with, and it might not be across the board, but it might be some individuals that just didn't quite get it. But that should not be the majority of our population. Why don't you know how to cook, ladies? And for that matter, you guys, why can't you fundamentally cook? Why does everything have to be a microwave or instant or restaurants? Think about it. Why don't you know how to sew clothes? If you have a hem that needs to be repaired or put together, or if you have a hole in a garment, why don't you know how to do that? Why don't you know how to put a hem in a curtain if you had to? I can do all of the things that I just said, those few things that I just mentioned to you. Why don't you know how to do that? Hello. Why don't you know how to lose weight? You can put it on, but you can't take it off. These are basic things, ladies and gentlemen. And you don't know how to do it, you need to consult an expert to learn how to lose weight. Again, there are some pre-existing situations or conditions, if you want to call it that, but that should not be the majority of people again. Why don't you know how to drop some pounds? and you say, I'm on this program, I'm on this diet and that diet, and you're jumping from diet to diet and program to program, but you're still the same and you have not changed. Haven't you learned you yet? Real quick footnote. Everything that man makes in the food industry is not food. There's things that we call food stuff. There are things that we call food substances. And then there's food. Food, real food, is from nature. Nothing added to it but nature. Natural spices to food that already exist. Anything that you make in a laboratory and you call it food is not. Guess what? It's not food. You don't know that. You don't use that common sense. So, if you begin to put all these types of things in your body, mixing and matching all kinds of things just simply because they smell good and taste good, you know what's going to happen. In the short term, you're going to begin to gain weight. In the long term, you're going to be extremely heavy and then have some health issues because you don't know how to. Hello. Why don't you know how to swim? Everyone should know how to swim. I mean, 2/3 of the world is surrounded by water. And I'm speaking to myself too, because we're all in this big earthly family together. We need to learn these things, ladies and gentlemen. Why don't you know how to protect yourself if your family was in danger outside of you? Why don't you know some basics? I mean, these are standard things of living, and you don't know these. Why don't you know first aid? You don't know how to stop bleeding? Oh, I have to call 911. Susie just cut her hand. Hello? You don't know how to stop the bleeding. Why don't you know mouth-to-mouth resuscitation or even CPR? Why don't you know this? I've got to call someone, but guess what? By the time they arrive, maybe your loved one has passed on because you did not know. There's some basic things that you need to know. Why don't you know how to write a letter as opposed to letting a computer do it for you? Why don't you know how to use your cell phone? Why don't you know how to text? Hello? Why? Why do you have to always pull a calculator out and not use your head to figure some things out and write it on pen and paper? Huh? Why is that? If you're having physical illness as a result of something that you did to yourself, why don't you know the basics about how to heal those things? My stomach hurts. Well, what caused your stomach to hurt? Have you investigated that? Then you should know what the remedy is, right? You really should. My head hurts. You don't know what to do about that? Oh, just run to the drugstore. Get some Tylenol. Get some pain reliever or pills or some Aleve or some ibuprofen. Hello. There's a lot of things that we do to ourselves. And if we know what we're doing to ourselves after an analysis, after we begin to research what we've done to ourselves, such as smoking, don't you know that smoking causes cancer? So why are you surprised when you go in the doctor's office and they say, well, I see a spot on your lung, or you can only use a certain percentage of your lung capacity because of smoking, but you're going to continue to smoking because what? It feels good, it calms your nerves, right? But it's killing you at the same time. Why don't you know? Apply yourself. Listen, doctors don't want you to know everything about you. There are some things that we need doctors for, especially emergency medical healthcare, right? But the basics about yourself, you should know. Lawyers don't want you to know about law, but you should know the basics so that you can know how to navigate within that system. You should. The food industry doesn't want you to know about the things that they're putting in our foods, the additives, the preservatives, and the genetically modified organism, and all the other things that they add there that's causing cancer later on down the road. They don't want you to know that. They don't, because you won't buy their products, and they won't make billions of dollars annually from you in your ignorance. But you should know. Why don't you know? The health industry doesn't want you to know how to lose weight. That's why America has over 50 to 60% of its population obese. They don't want you to know, because there's no cure in you being healed. On all levels, there's no cure in you being healed financially, if you know. There's no cure in you being healed legally, if you know. There's no cure in you being healed physically, mentally, if you know the basics. The real question again, as I close, is why don't you know? You just ought to know. Start studying the world that you live in so that you can move better and freely in this world without third parties telling you about yourself, what you should know about yourself. That was it. That was all.